Hello, hello. Hey, what's up, guys? We are live. Welcome to the stream. I'm just finishing up the setup here, but I do have the chat next to me. So if you have any questions or anything that you want to ask throughout the stream, feel free to put it in the chat. Let me know if you can hear me all right and if you can see me, and I'll just switch to the screen. All right, cool. So all system goes. I managed to tweak things around for the stream so that the camera doesn't occlude any of the these things that I have here at the bottom. But if I want to kind of like explain something to the camera, I'll just leave the screen on and then I'll switch to this. So I'm just gonna test that you can hear me in the full screen. All right, testing, testing. Can you hear me? Can you hear me all right? This is yeah, this is oh, hang on. I also have to get rid of the name here. Hang on. Sorry, guys, I'm still trying to figure this out. Okay, cool. Yes, awesome. All right, so we have the two type of screens, and I'll be able to switch between the two. Easy. All right. Hey, Maximo Guerrero, Ana, Anastasia, Iliman, Iliman, Manny. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce some of your handles here. Cool. All right. So we're gonna do something very cool, very different today that I think you guys are going to like. You might be aware of some of the features that I want to show you, but if not, you'll see kind of like it's one of those eye openers. Like, oh, I didn't know you could use this tool to do what I'm gonna show you. So it's gonna be pretty cool. So let me just catch up with some of the questions from before, because I also, if you message me directly on Instagram or any of the socials, or you tag me, and if there's like a question that is not too specific, that is something that I can share and answer in these streams that will benefit everyone, I will just put it in a kind of like a to-do list that I have, and yeah, basically I can just grab from those as well and show you guys a few things. Uh, could you cover the creation of a tileable normal texture used in the detailed normal you covered last episode? Um, oh yeah, didn't I cover that? Or maybe I skipped it totally. But it's really easy. We could start with that actually. All right, let's just jump straight into it. I'll show you how to do that, and then we'll continue with today's idea, which is gonna be something completely new. And I want to show you how I approach the process of prototyping, which is I think one of the most important things. In fact, I'm working on a new tutorial that is been taking a while because I'm structuring in a way that I can show you guys how to overcome this idea that the projects will lose you will lose interest in your projects very quickly. So there's a couple of, well, three very important things that you should keep in mind when you're starting a project, so that when the novelty of it wears off, because you're like, oh yeah, I want to create a creature, and then you just start doing that, and then halfway through it's like, I'm going to start a new project. So yeah, I'm working on something that will ensure that longevity of the project, and I think anyway, it's relevant to what we're going to be doing today, which is prototyping. But let's do the title texture. So in ZBrush is pretty easy. What I'm gonna do though is start with a 1024 by 1024 document. So let me just actually go to the document palette here, and I'm gonna switch the Pro from proportional. So 1024 by 1024. You could do it, more than that. You can do 2K if you want. I'm gonna click on resize, and yes, and I'm gonna hold Control and N to get rid of the anything in the canvas. That's it. And then I'm gonna click on AA half. So this is my new document. That's step one. Make sure that your document is a square one so that anything that we do is stylable. It doesn't have to be 1024. You can do it as 2K or 4K, up to you. But 1024 for a detail map, it's pretty easy. So let's go ahead and select a tool, and I'm gonna click on Plane 3D, click and drag, and enter edit mode. Okay, So now that we are in edit mode, and let me just show you what this looks like. This is just the normal plane, but this is still a primitive, meaning that you can tweak a few things in the initialize tab here. I want to keep it super simple, so I'm going to click on Polymesh 3D. That's it. Now let's go to the subtool, and this is the third step. So second step is just to select a plane and just make sure that it is a Polymesh 3D. The third step is to go to the subtools and duplicate it. That's it. So we have two meshes that are exactly the same coplanar currently in the same space. So we're going to take the second one and we're going to scale it twice the size. And that's another pretty easy thing to do. There are multiple ways of doing the same thing in ZBrush. For me, the easiest is just to bring in the gizmo, click on the center of the scale, which is going to be proportional. So this yellow square here, click and drag. And as you drag, you see a number right at the bottom of the gizmo. And I'm going to press the shift key. So I'm gonna make sure that I have a number 2. So keep pushing. There we go, and let go. So that number 2 means that is twice the size. That's it. You could do it from the deformation palette. You could do a bunch of other ways, but this is just very easy. So let's get out of the gizmo. So now we have the, this sort of like weird thing that you see here. That is because it is coplanar, so they are exactly in the same spot, and that's what we want at this point. So the next thing we need to do is actually, sorry, I just moved the screen. There we go. So the next thing that we need to do is decide in which one we're going to sculpt and which one we're going to use it to frame it around this square format. So we're going to use the second one to draw. So we're going to rename it, or let's call it sculpt or sculpting plane, whatever you want. And the first one, we're going to call this one the frame, because we're going to literally use that only to frame it into the canvas. And that's what's going to ensure the tileability of whatever we get from this point. So that's it. The next thing is we're going to hide the sculpt, or you don't need to hide it. You can also actually go into solo mode. So with the frame selected, you go into solo mode, right? So that's the small one. And we're going to rotate around, also turn off perspective just in case. So rotate around, and when you start rotating, press the shift key, and that snaps to that front camera. That's it. So you ensure that you're looking at it in kind of like a straight line to from your perspective, from the camera to the plane. So totally perpendicular to the plane. And then I'm going to click on frame. That's why I call this one frame, because we're going to frame it. So we're going to click on that, and basically ZBrush just frame it so that it matches exactly the size of that square format. And because it is a square plane, it is going to be perfectly aligned to the square document. That's the key. So up to this point, that's kind of like the setup. If you don't want to mess around with this, you can go ahead and log the camera here. So at the top, this is my custom UI. So you can do that from the draw palette here. This one right here. So this button is what I have in my UI. You can press it and it will lock the camera, so you won't be able to move. Now, you can do that right now, but just so that you understand how it works, I'm going to show you something else. So let's get out of solo. I'm going to select the sculpt and go back into solo. This one, we just need to subdivide it. But I'm going to get closer here to the corner. All right. So if I press Control D to subdivide, you see, because it uses that sort of Catmull Clark subdivision, it's going to take each square, it's going to subdivide it in a grid format. So it's creating this average here in the corner. So let's do it again, Control D, and the more you do it, the rounded that is going to become, or the smoother, basically, not the rounded, but the smoother. So Control D again. So I have 4 subdivision levels, about 66,000 points. I'm going to do it one more time. Now I have 263. One more time. Now I have 1 million polygons in this plane. But you have this corner. So the key thing to keep in mind here, or to remember, is that this is totally fine, because we are only going to be, and I'm going to paint this just so that you can see what I'm doing. We're only going to work in this area, right? Because this is the area that we will be able to frame, right? So it doesn't really matter. Any of this doesn't really matter. So we're going to concentrate on this area of the plane. Now, the other thing is, let's go ahead and bring in the left-hand side palette. And I think at this point, I'll probably just, it's still okay. Let's bring in the brush to the left-hand side. I'm going to clear some of those brushes. And I'm going to go to where it says curve. And you can see that, yep. So the curve in here, this sub-palette has this wrap mode. So this is the next kind of like big thing in order to create these tileable textures. And it works for absolutely any tileable texture, by the way. So I'm going to set this to 1, and this is going to tell ZBrush, because ZBrush works in these sort of like 2 by 2 by 2 units, that 1 is non-tileable, or sorry, 0 is non-tileable. 1 is going to start tiling to left and right, up and down once. If you go to 2, it's going to do it twice, and so on and so forth. So right now, it's just at 1, meaning that if I paint something here, you'll see that I'm going to do it right in the center, kind of. I'm trying to paint it here, a little bit lower. Kind of. Hopefully you can see. Basically, if I just paint in the middle of this plane, because I have the wrap mode to 1, is going to create a point on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, on the top and the bottom, and of course the corners, because it's already tiling. If I set this to 2, and I'm going to do that with a red color, see if that changes this. I want to paint here. Now it is not, let's do it in the center again. Now it's not only do it once, but it's doing it twice. So we need to make sure that we set it to 1, because we don't want to repeat the pattern inside this area. So I want to set it to 1. Clear that, or just change the color. And this is the key thing, right? So I'm gonna do a couple of lines just to show you that this is stylable, right? Cool. Let's also turn this off. So we have a tileable texture right now, but in order to capture the tileability of this, that's what we need to use the frame, because otherwise it will be pretty hard to just try to move around and say, okay, this line kind of like follows from here, but it's not perfect. Maybe more, that's never it's gonna be really, really hard, almost impossible to get it. So the easiest thing is to go into solo mode, make sure that you are still in solo mode, go to frame. Then we have the single frame that hasn't been subdivided, that has the sharp edges, the sharp corners, and we can just go ahead and frame it. So frame that. If you do it once, it's going to try to frame both of the subtools or any subtool that you have. So in the entire volume of subtools, if you press it again, it's going to do it based on one subtool. So this is, I mean, you're probably aware of this, but it's important to know, whenever you have multiple subtools, in fact, I'm going to bring in the other one. When you press F, it's going to frame it based on anything that is available to you in your subtools. So the entirety of the subtools, if you press frame again, is going to do it based on a single subtool. So you can just switch between F, 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 F. That's it. So now I'm framed in here. And now that I know exactly that my plane is aligned with my document, I'm going to log my camera. That's it. So now I can turn off my frame and go into sculpt. All right. So now this shows me that, and I'm actually going to bring my Epic pens to, okay, hang on. Where is my Epic pen? Okay, here we go. So basically, now that we have framed this, we know for sure that this line right here aligns perfectly with this one. And we know that there's going to be, let's say, this one that we painted, let's do it with a different color. This line is going to appear here, and it's going to appear around here, and it's going to appear at the top, because again, this is how it looks in the plane that we scaled twice as big, right? So we are essentially tiling or painting or sculpting in the plane that is twice as big, but we're using the small one to frame it so that we know for sure it is styling. That is about it. So now that you know this, let's go ahead and I'm going to clear this with white color. I'm going to go into basic mode or basic material, and I'm going to use something. Let's use the standard brush, and let's actually change this alpha to alpha 08, and I'm going to choose the spray. Now, if I start doing this with this brush, let's make it a bit bigger, and actually I'm going to reduce the intensity a little bit. If I start doing this, right, and I go to the edge, nothing is going to work, because the tileability of this brush is, sorry, the tileability of the feature of making something tileable is on a per brush basis. So if I switch to another brush, I need to make sure that I enable it. So this is super important, because if you are just doing this and decide, and let's do it again. So I'm going to go to the wrap mode. So now my standard brush, it is styling regardless of the stroke that I'm using, right? I'm going to be able to tile all of this, which is great. So let's just go ahead and do that. I'm going to fill in this noise, this random generic noise. So this is styling. Now, if I go ahead and say, this is too harsh, I'm going to press the Shift key just to start smoothing this out, and I get to the edge. You see the other edge is not smoothing out. That is because the smooth also needs to be enabled as a tileable. So this is just to let you know that whatever tool, whatever brush you use, smooth or masking brushes, you need to make sure that you enable the tile or like the wrap mode to 1 so that everything behaves the same. And always remember to set it back to 0. Otherwise, you will be sculpting and then you see a bunch of extra tileable pieces when you're sculpting, which is probably not what you want. So now that you have this, we can just maybe switch to a smooth picks, and I'm gonna press this, and of course, let's hold the Shift key and add wrap mode. So I'm gonna smooth this out, and you see that the smoothing is happening in both sides and all of the corners and the edges. So this, just by using the smooth peaks, that allows you to create that sort of pattern, that effect of the skin. So we're gonna do something very quickly. Obviously, you can spend more time doing this, but then if you want to do another pattern, like let's say a little wrinkle around these areas for the skin, if you want to use this as a detailed normal map, I'm gonna switch to a HR Geiger. So this is actually, let's do it with the damp standard brush. This is something that you have access to that comes with ZBrush, something like this. So let's go ahead and add wrap mode. So now whatever you do is going to wrap. Okay. So the idea with this is that you can just go ahead and start creating these sort of like patterns. Now, at this point, you could just enable wrap mode maybe 3, and then you're gonna have more of this. So you could do this a little bit faster. Just keep in mind that the more of these that you do, or like the more clearly visible patterns that you're tiling in one frame, the easier is going to be to spot the repetition of the patterns or the repetition of the features. So I'll prefer to just stay with large brushes and do this type of stuff. So I'll go with long lines. So this is styling at just one, like so, and then we can just turn. And if this is a little bit hard for you guys to see what I'm doing in terms of the details, another cool thing you can do is switch to the normal matcap. So I'm gonna click on the normal RGB map. So if you click on this one, you get the normal map straight away. And this is literally what I'm gonna use to extract the normal map. So this is super convenient because you will see in real time that that depth that the normal map will give you. And if you press really hard, then you can clearly see the biggest difference, or like the big difference that you're making with this. So I'll just go with wiggly lines all this way. I'm not gonna finish the entire map, but this will give you a rough idea of how I approach this. And you can do multiple ones, right? You can do, I don't know, maybe 20 of these maps. Just look on an afternoon, put some good music or a good podcast, or a movie in the background or whatever, and then just start doing this, right? And then you do 20 of these variations of this, and that's basically building up your library. And when you need a detailed normal like this, you have plenty from your own library to choose from. And I always say it is great to get things online, and some people are really good at doing specific things. So and it's personally, I think it's great to support other artists as well. Uh, but if you can learn how to do your own resources, or even if you download and buy resources from someone else, and if you explore how they build them and you can build your own, that is probably the best thing you can do, purely because you know exactly what you want, and you know the type of, or the style, or the type of artwork that you're working on. So I think it's better. And this is the reason why some of my brushes, I set them up so that you can make more brushes like that. So if you buy a pack of brushes, most of my brushes come in a way that you can make more of those brushes. So you just duplicate it and adjust things. Anyway, that's just another point. All right, so let's double check the questions quickly. Am I using Houdini or Blender? Neither of those. Coffee, I'm using ZBrush. I don't use Houdini. I know it's super powerful. I don't use it. Just haven't got into it. Blender is something that I'm getting more and more familiar with, but this is not Blender. Hey, Rhiannon. Hey, Omega. Did not know that? No worries. Um, so Alberto, he usado a veces array mesh. So Alberto is saying that he's used array mesh before to extract the alpha for the brush stitching, and you could activate it using the wrap mode and the mRGB grabber and extract the alpha. Sounds like a useful workflow. Not sure if I get it completely. Cool. So let's say that you're happy with this. Now the final bit before we jump into what I was planning to do today would be to extract this so that you can use it. Of course, if let me just show you something else. If you go to the brushes, and I'm mentioning this because I know some of you guys already have the brush pack that I share. So this is a brush pack that I have, the skin brush pack, right? So if you have something like, let's go with these imperfections 01. So I'm gonna double click on that one. That's another brush. I'm gonna enable wrap mode, and then I'm gonna start adding some imperfections, and these are just like bumps to make this a bit more interesting, and maybe some pores. I know it doesn't really make sense in this case, but let's just do pore spray and something like this. But you see, this is what I wanted to show you. When I loaded the brush pores, this is one of the brushes that I set up so that you can make more brushes. So you see, when I load it, it already has this wrap mode set to 1. So if you take this brush and you are sculpting a face and then you start painting, or sorry, adding pores or details, is going to tile on your mesh, and it might not be what you want. So you need to be aware that if you get unwanted details with any of these custom brushes, check the wrap mode that is set to 1 or to 0. So if you don't want the effect, set it to 0. If you want to use this, which is what I'm doing right now, to create more of these, the wrap mode is already set to 1. So it's just a very easy fix. But that's it. So once you're happy with this, what you need to do is you can go to actual. So that is going to bring the document to the actual size, so the 1024 by 1024. Then you go to document, and then you can go to document here, and then you can just go ahead and export it. So you export that image, and that's it. You just set it as a JPEG. You don't need to do anything else. And you can actually, before you start sculpting this, you can save this original subtool. So whenever you want to do another tileable texture or a pattern or whatever you want to do, an alpha, you can load that subtool or that tool that has the frame and the sculpt and everything is ready to go. Or you can actually save it as a project, and it will save with the size of the document that you want, the matcap material, all of that good stuff. So you just need to load one project as your template, and then you start creating this. So hopefully that has been of help. Let's go ahead and jump into the other part. Caster, do you give feedback to people if they send you their work? Yeah, so I am happy to provide feedback and just share my 2 cents on something. Is mostly I do that for the extra mile and the communities that we have, the private communities, because it's just a matter of time. So I don't have a lot of extra time to sit down and do it properly. And if I'm gonna do anything, I try to do like I just give 100% of what I can. So if if I only have like 5 minutes just to give you a couple of tips and it's gonna be very quick, I'm happy to do it. But I usually prefer to just take the time and really analyze things and yeah, and provide feedback that is valuable, not just like, oh yeah, change this thing here and there. So because I don't have a lot of time, that's usually my problem, that I don't have a lot of time. But yeah, I could do it. You can also join the Discord community, and in the Discord community we have a feedback channel. And if I cannot do it, there's plenty of other artists that are really good and then providing really good feedback as well. All right, let's jump into what we need to do. So what I'm going to do is reset all my brushes just in case. So reset all brushes here. So that make sure that all the brushes that I tweak and change the wrap mode are back to normal. I want to click on a new document with W size, so meaning that the entire window will fit. So new document, I want to click on double just to make sure it's a large one. And I'm going to click on a sphere 3D, click and drag, edit, go a half, and switch to a basic material. All right. Cool. So let's unlock the camera as well. Perfect. So we're back to normal. All right. So what I wanted to show you guys is just a way of quickly prototype. So I want to do some kind of protector or like a guardian type of thing, but like okay. The easiest thing to refer to is like, I don't know if you can see. It's a little bit out of focus. Let me just get it. this I think is I call it Ubita's Chiricui, but this guy right here is kind of like a hard surface dude, but the hard surface quality is just um, very organic. So it's like an organic robot in a way. And that's the type of like hard surface that I really enjoy. So I want to do something that could potentially live the in this world of like this guy. So I want to show you how I would go about it. All right. So the tool that I want to show you, I mean, you can use a bunch of different things, but the tool that I want to show you is the mesh balloon. And I do have a dedicated tutorial on my channel. You can go ahead and watch that as well. But this one is kind of like a more practical way of approaching it. So the mesh balloon, if you hold the control key, hang on. Wait, I lost my chat. Here we go. All right, sorry. All right, so if I press the control key, I access my masking brushes, right? If I hold the control key and click on my mask brush, I have these really cool brushes here that you might be aware of them. I'm gonna show you how I use them for this type of stuff. So the most practical one I would say is the mesh balloon because it allows you to build things quickly. The other ones are also useful, but they're very restricted in the way that they produce the mesh. So it's like a planar mesh, which it might be what you want, but we're gonna concentrate on the mesh balloon. So now this is my new masking brush. So when I mask and I hold control, I will create this mesh. So the basics of this brush, again, very simple. You can hold the control key to access your masking brush, which in this case is the mesh balloon. And if you're anywhere inside or over the mesh, you can click and drag, and this mask, the shape of this mask is going to be your new mesh. All right. So this is really, really cool. Now, before I move the camera, rotate anything around, if I hold control and again do another something like this, and then I press the Alt key, then I'm going to create a hole through the mesh. But it's the same thing as doing this. Hold the Alt key, and I'm just basically removing pieces, right? So this is one of the functionalities of this. Now there's another one, but I'm pretty sure it's broken in 2026. So if you do this, um, ideally you will be able to add to it as well. So you can press Control, click and drag, and then press the Shift key. So you see it adds to it, but it doesn't add the right shape. So I think that's broken. Anyway, I'm not going to use it. Just want to show you that the Alt key and the Shift key are modifiers for this brush or for this tool. And the other important thing is, depending on where I click on the mesh, that's going to be my center line for that mesh balloon. So if I click and drag and do this, and I rotate around, you'll see that roughly this is the center of this balloon, or like that mask that I created, and it builds the volume or the balloon in both sides, right? And the center line is aligned with this sort of edge of the mesh that you clicked on. So just a couple of important things to keep in mind when you're using this tool. Let's undo that. So if I click kind of like at the top here, and I do the same thing, it's going to be closer to the center. You see? So it's depending on where you click. That's the depth of this mesh balloon. There are a few other things that we can play around with. So if I go to the brush palette, and I'm going to scroll all the way down to where it says mask mesh modifiers. So these three things here, those are the things that deal with anything to do with the mesh balloon. So right now they're grayed out, but if I press the control key, I access them. So you can change the resolution. I'm not going to do that. That is basically changing how many, it's kind of like the Dynamesh resolution of that balloon. I think this is a pretty decent resolution, so I'm not going to change the 128. But depending on the size of your scene or how big you're working in ZBrush, you might have to adjust that. The other one is the smoothness. Again, all of these settings are by default because they're the kind of like the best ones. But you can change this to 0, and then you're going to get something like super sharp, right? So it gets like, it might be what you want. I don't know. It's not my cup of tea, so I'm going to set it to the default, which is 25. And the bevel is not as obvious in this one. The bevel is this one right here. So I'm going to switch to a different brush just to show you the bevel. So if I press Control and click on let's try this mesh project, which is another one that I'll probably use, really cool one. This allows you to create the same thing, and it's just going to add a mesh projected to the object. So you can keep doing this and add kind of like panels very quickly, very easy. The difference with this one is you see we have this edge here, and that's what the bevel is. Right. So when you draw the mask is like this, right? ZBrush is going to look at that and it's going to create this bevel based on this value here, and then the rest of the mesh, right? And the intensity is just has to do with the intensity of the brush itself. So if I let's leave this one as a reference there. If I increase this to 10 and do this, you'll see the bevel is massive, even though I haven't changed the actual depth of the brush. And if I set it to 0, then it's just going to be a straight, piece. And you can go ahead, because the geometry is really clean in this case. You can also this is kind of like a more not advanced, but like something that I would do later on in the process. But you could use the select lasso to isolate the poly loop. It's going to be hard to do it from here. Anyway, you can isolate this, and yeah, essentially create polygroups and retopologize these with ZRemesher, etc. Anyway, so those are the things. Let's just leave it at 0.5 roughly. And let's undo that. All right. So with that out of the way, that's kind of like the basics of the brush. You can edit it as much as you want. We're going to go back to the balloon mesh, and I'm going to create something like, I don't know. We're just going to create some legs. So I'm going to hold control. By the way, you can also enable symmetry. So you could work with symmetry as well. So that's totally fine. I'm not going to use some symmetry, and then I'm going to mirror and weld it. So let's see. I'm going to do control like so. And then maybe from this angle, I'm going to do the same thing. So that's kind of like a leg, maybe. But this is really the idea of prototyping. Now, another thing I'm going to show you is that every time that you create this, you will essentially create a mask for the rest, right? Let's go into full screen mode here. I think it's going to be easier to visualize this and concentrate on what we're actually doing. So because it creates this mask, I can bring in the gizmo and I can adjust this straight away without editing anything. I can also use, let's say, a modifier just for this section right here. So I can taper that. Right? So I don't know if this is going to be what what I want. Let's actually go back in time. And I think I'm going to use symmetry just because it's going to be easy to visualize the proportions. And obviously, this is just a sphere, so we could actually, do something like this, and maybe use the arc modifier to change that slightly. So we have something more like a body, let's say. All right. So I'm going to do some kind of forearm there. And then let's do something for the legs as well. All right, so that probably gives you a better idea of what I'm going for. We'll definitely tweak this out, but this is a very simple, very easy way to generate this. All right, I'm probably also going to play around with a bit of a body that's a bit more interesting than this. So we could potentially go. I'll show you what I'm kind of like seeing now that I started making this thing up. So let's say that this is going to be kind of like the forearm, sorry, the arm, like this, right? This is going to be like, I think it's called like a hinged leg, right? So if this is the body, then I want to do something like a really long neck, but that is wrapped around like so. So it could be like a big, I don't know exactly what this could be, but it sort of like wraps around like an S shape. Maybe the tail is there, kind of like a snake with legs. We'll see if that works. But basically, so that you read the body as a mass like this, probably smaller than this. But if it was to unwrap or extend the neck, it will be pretty long. Like a, I don't know if that makes sense. Let's see if we can just get it to work. That is the point of the prototyping anyway. So instead of using the mesh balloon, I'm going to use just the normal curve tubes. And I'm just going to, by default, it should be on 1C. So whenever I click, it's going to stay there, right? So I'll use this to create maybe let's start from here. Maybe not that much. All right, I think something like this could work. And the cool thing is this stays in one center line because that's where I clicked. But I can just go ahead and move this a little bit more. Click somewhere else just to accept this. And I'm going to split this one because I don't want to mess with the other bits. So I'm going to go to split on mask points. For you guys, that would be under the split subsection here. So split on mask points. And now I can bring in my gizmo, sorry, my move brush and the gizmo. And I'm just going to do mirror and, oops, not that one, mirror and well for this bit. Actually, before I do that, I think I'm going to separate this a bit just so that it doesn't merge these points. There we go, mirror and well. All right, cool. All right, and for the other bit, for the body, before I do the mirror and well, if you look at the polyframe, we actually have different polygroups, so that is pretty handy. So I'm going to take this one, mask that, invert that mask, bring in the gizmo, center it, and maybe just lower this one a bit more. And I'm going to start playing around with the, like I'm going to move these things away from that plane that I originally add them to. So the process here becomes very repetitive, the same thing, but I will be able to do this type of more asymmetrical shapes. And that is even before we start adding any asymmetry, let's say with the move brush or adjusting any shape. So this is literally adjusting the blockout. All right, let's move this one more like so, I think. We'll probably need to adjust the curvature of this as well, but I think this will be nice. And this one, I'm just going to grab them all, and I think I wanna open these arms a bit more, and maybe add an extra set of arms. So it's kind of like a insectoid type of thing. That would be cool. All right. And this also allows me to think about some of the tension points and the tangents. I think we've talked about this before, but see this from this angle, this area becomes a bit like a tension point because there are like visually some points that are touching right at the edge, and that creates that tension point. Here is fine, but we can improve this a little bit. Same thing with this line and this visual line. So all of those are the things that once we start adjusting the shapes becomes more evident, and we can play around with that. So let's get back to the original sort of process. I want to use the body, and with the control key again to access my mesh balloon, I'm going to do something like this, maybe something like that first, then like this, and then some sort of like mantis type of shape. Let's find something interesting like this, and then the gizmo. All right, so that is not too bad. We can go ahead and isolate this. let's split this, split hidden. Now we have this, and we're gonna let's place it somewhere here. I'm gonna clear my mask. Um, so again, I'm gonna try to maintain that sort of idea with the body. Maybe from the top, that's also a good idea. See if we can find something a bit more interesting. And let's also rotate it up a little bit. All right, cool. So we have the basics, and I know this doesn't look like much right now, but trust me, this is one of the important things. Once you get this down, it's kind of like the same that same idea that you probably seen on social media, or that says like make it exist first, and then you make it better after. This is the same concept. Making it exist, to me, is just prototyping, right? So generate the thing that you want, prototype it, see how it works, see if you can see any future on this, and if it has legs, literally, and then you can just go ahead and move on and polish it. So now that we have this, I'm just going to go ahead and see and visualize this as a whole by having the mirror side. So I'm going to mirror and weld, and I'll do the same thing with the legs. So now we have this sort of like spider type of creature thing. Again, very, very basic, but we can go ahead and start adjusting it. So I'm going to move to the move topological and with the AccuCurve. And I'm also going to merge everything down. Actually, before I do that, let's take this thing, and I'm just going to do a quick ZRemesher, and I'm going to polish. Smooth everything and remesh again, maybe with lower resolution. So in this case, you can do the Dynamesh, of course, but in this case that I have like something really, really close to each other, having the ZRemesher is a really good tool to sketch as well. So treat the ZRemesher just like you would treat the Dynamesh. When you click and drag to re-Dynamesh, you could do the same thing, do anything you want in here, and then ZRemesher, and then adjust that. So it's the same thing. It's just that you get nice quads. And just for the sake of being able to manipulate all of this a lot easier, I'm going to straight away select my lasso, my my select lasso. I'm going to hold Control and Shift at the same time and click one of these polyloops. And I'm going to go to Polygroup and click on Auto Groups, and then bring back everything. And I'll isolate that, auto group this as well, or group visible. So basically to create a couple of polygroups so that I can work a little bit easier. Okay. So now that I have this, again, this ZRemesher is purely a tool to sketch at this point. So I'm gonna go ahead and merge everything down, or we could actually do merge visible. So let's go to merge visible, and now we have this single mesh, and we can activate symmetry. Great. So now we can go ahead and start adjusting all of this to, make it more kind of like grounded design. So I'm gonna start pushing these bits, and because I'm using the move topological with the AccuCurve, it's going to be very easy to make sure that these things are sort of or feel kind of connected as well. And sometimes, this process, when you're trying to connect bits and pieces, it produces a few unwanted, or like, a few mistakes that you can then turn into something else. So for example, these legs are way too thick here. So don't be too precious about the mesh balloon. In fact, the mesh balloon is just a simple way to get started, but it's not going to give you like super clean meshes. So don't be too precious about it. Another cool thing I should also mention is the backface masking at this stage. So you could just let's actually do unified so that we can work with larger brushes. The Unify, by the way, if you don't know about that, that's the preferred size that ZBrush work with. So I can just increase or decrease my brush a little bit easier. Otherwise, it's a bit hard. So what was I talking about? I forgot already. Something like, oh yeah, so don't be too precious about using or changing this. because we will be able to, let's say, change this, make it like a thinner piece or a thinner leg, right? But if you want to move this into the more biomechanical, um, organic robot type of thingy, we can do a few things. We can enable the backface masking with the AccuCurve and the move topological, and look what's going to happen. So whenever I click, I'm going to drag this, but it's not going to affect the backside. So it could have like a really large brush, but it's not going to affect the backside of where I push. So that's how I create, let's say, this point here, maybe a bit higher, right? And then I can keep doing the same thing. Maybe it'll be a little bit more evident if I just do it from this angle, like so. You see, I'm only affecting the front side. So let's do it like this. And in this case, I think we'll do it here. There we go. And in this case, we'll do it from this angle. All right. I'm gonna also, I think this is not symmetrical, so let's mirror and weld that. Oh, sorry. Let's mirror and weld everything. And we can just go ahead and do I think we can actually do a ZRemesher already and then just play with those things. Let's try that. So I'm gonna do ZRemesher. There's an error. That also has to do because, well, it probably isn't, but we'll see if that is the problem. um, I think it's because we use the mesh balloon. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to edit mesh, close holes, and let's try it again. Nope, there's an error. So we need to find out what the error is. Let's do mirror and weld and do it again. Nope. So we're gonna go to the geometry, and at the bottom where it says mesh integrity, we're gonna click on check mesh integrity. It found two edges that are shared by more than one polygon. That is likely because of either the mirror and weld that we did with this ZRemesher or the mesh balloon. So we're just gonna click on fix mesh, that's it, and try it again. So it's a pretty easy fix. And also auto group, and maybe a mirror and weld again. All right, so now we have just a bunch of simple meshes that we can play with. If you want to explore things a lot more, we can obviously go into Dynamesh and just keep the groups as well. So that's another thing you can do. But I think I'm going to start playing with this first, just a simple mesh. Maybe we can do like a larger shape here for the head, kind of like a cobra that wraps around there. Just keep in mind that all of this is still iterating the design process. So in other words, it's like thumbnailing at this point, but directly in 3D. And I see some activity in the chat, so I'll just check that in a second. All right. Another thing that I probably want to do is ground the design a little bit, or not ground it, sorry. Well, I guess quite literally put it on the ground. So I'm going to use the knife brush and just cut through the whole thing. So we have like a flat bit in there, and we can do another ZRemesher. We can also isolate this. Let's do it again, kind of like what I did before. Auto groups, group visible, mirror and well. So we now have all these polygroups. Let's keep groups and remesh this whole thing. All right. And at this point, we could move into the Dynamesh world, or we could do. Let's see. I'm going to show you a couple of things because the Dynamesh is pretty obvious, and you probably already are aware of it. So let's do something different. So what I'll do is I'm going to split the legs. So split hidden. Then I'm going to split these front legs as well. Split hidden. Let's go back to the body, and I'll split this as well. Or actually, this could stay the same. And instead, I'm just going to move this down just to create some gap in there, and then we'll put it closer. Okay, so the reason I want to do that is because I have 3 pieces now, or 3 sections that I can Boolean and create a simpler mesh. So we have 3 different pieces here, or like each one of these legs or arms have 3 different pieces. So what I'll do is I'm going to go to the gizmo, I'm going to click on the gear icon, and I'm going to click on remesh by union. So that is going to essentially combine this and create this triangulation here, but it's actually what I need. Let's click on gear and accept that. So basically now if I hide portion of this, you'll see that it is combined. So it is a single mesh. It just keeps the groups, but it's a single mesh. So if I smooth this out, this is going to be a single mesh, which is exactly what I want. But of course, the topology is not great. So we could just go ahead and straight away do a ZRemesher, keeping groups. So let's do that, maybe with less resolution, right? And ZBrush is going to maintain the difference in those polygroups. So let's do maybe polish by group. And let's do a remesh again. So we now have like a nice and clean set of loops in there. All right, let's go ahead and do the same thing with this one. So repeat the process, bring in the gizmo. Let's click on remesh by union, accept the gear icon, then a polygon, a target of maybe 3000 or 4000. Remesh that with the symmetry. There were like some weird bits and pieces here. Let me just fix that. I think that's where the original issue was. Let me undo all of this before I do this remesh by union. So there might be some issue there. So I don't want to mess with that. Let's try it one more time. So Gizmo 3D, gear icon, and remesh by union. Yeah, there's something going on here. So we need to figure out first what this is. Hopefully there's no, shouldn't be a problem. Let's go ahead and do a geometry, check mesh, integrity, fix the mesh. I'm gonna also do close holes just in case. And let's go ahead and try it one more time. So Gizmo, I'm gonna turn off symmetry just in case that's one of the issues. And there we go. So that is it. Let's click on accept. And we're gonna keep the polygroups and remesh the whole thing with symmetry. Polymesh, let's do polish by groups. Let's do it again. Okay, so now we have a nice base mesh. Let's do the final one. Bring in the gizmo. Let's do remesh by union. Great. Accept. So the same process really. Reduce the polygon count. Polish by groups. Let's do it again. I think that's fine. Remember, this is not going to be the final sort of mesh, really. And now we can just go ahead and merge everything together. We can do merge visible. We have another tool that has everything now. And we can start, whoops, mirror and well. We can start playing with adjusting the volumes now. And now I'm going to try to bring this kind of like closer to a more of a creature. So I'm going to start thinking about more the creature anatomy and how this actually could work. And that's the fun bit, really. So maybe we have some sort of shoulder blades here at the bottom, and then the rest sort of the rest of the body kind of like rest on top like that. Let's figure this one out first. I'll check the questions in just a second, guys, because I don't have too much time today, so I'm gonna make sure I at least get the blocking of this thing ready before I wrap up. Okay, and for the head, I think the head will be tiny in comparison to the body, and that helps to accentuate a little bit of the scale of this creature. All right, so I just masked that bit so that I can push this closer. And I could also actually let's mask this one and this one. Let's do auto groups so that we can select just the top part of the body, and let's mask that out. Smooth that mask a bit, and then we can use the normal move brush to push all of those pieces together at the same time. So maybe I can scale them, make them a bit wider, and just add a bit more of, like, let's say the equivalent to a thoracic cage here. That makes sense. And just so that you guys, because I know this is still super abstract, but just so that you guys can get a feel of what I sort of see, I'm going to bring in some eyes and create a quick mouth just so that you have that as reference. So I'm going to go to the macro, and this is something that comes with ZBrush, pretty handy. And I'm going to click on a append eyes, and this is a macro that comes with ZBrush. And I now have a couple of spheres that have a black color and a I think it's called the toy plastic, this one that they use. I'm going to bring in the gizmo, turn on local symmetry so that I can scale based on the volume of these tools with symmetry, and I'm going to try to place the eyes. Like this. You know what? Maybe we can add more than one pair. We can do holding control. You can create more, like duplicate things. Maybe some sort of like compound, not compound, multi-clustered eye or something. I don't know. This obviously will change, but now we have these, and it's gonna be a little bit easier if I just do some sort of like indication of a mouth. Like so. And then we can also, I'm going to use this Geiger cutter just because it's a pretty harsh one, even at this resolution, just to have some indication of where I can explore the anatomy a bit more. So just a couple of quick lines, but you see that sort of gives it a bit more character and make it slightly more realistic at a very, very low resolution. But I think that's the key of the prototyping, that you don't want to spend too much time detailing. You don't want to spend time um, arranging things too much. What you need is to concentrate on the areas that will actually matter when you want to showcase this as a concept, as an idea, which is how people will read this from the front view or from the side view. And if you pay attention to what I try to do, I don't know if it's obvious. I'll actually do. Let's do it from here. I'm trying to create this sort of bell shape, and I'll see if I can just maintain that sort of curvature. So that is from the front view. From the side view, I have a different shape. But again, just kind of like following these curvature lines, but it is ultimately a square, which as a very simple way of leaning into the psychology of the shape language. Really, this sort of square gives stability, and it sort of showcases that this character as something that is kind of like um, hard to move in a way. So it has like a good stand, and that's kind of like what I'm going for. And also the fact that this has these rounded shapes, it's it plays there's a thing called the cognitive bias, and the cognitive bias kind of like tell you that if you see something like these sort of sharp corners, which this guy has quite a few things, right? That usually indicates danger, or that usually indicates like it's an evil character and that sort of thing, right? But I am doing a huge contrast with this in terms of the general language or shape language, which is very soft, um, you know, soft S's and like shapes like this, and lines that are very very smooth, which in general implies that it's closer to the rounder shape, or like the circle or sphere, that usually implies that is a benevolent character, or someone that might like a hero character, or someone that would have a change in the story arc throughout, like, let's say, the movie. And this is the type of things that I'm thinking at the moment. So I'm kind of like juxtaposing these two things with the sharp corners and the more rounded shapes to create that bit of a contrast. So yeah, that's roughly what I'm trying to do here. Maybe I'm overdoing it and exaggerating it too much, but that's what I want to go for. Now, another cool thing you can do is when you're prototyping things like this and you're at this point, you could actually just bring in the gizmo, center it, and let's say put it here, and then you can change the focal shift. So I'm going to right click and change that focal shift to 72, and that creates a soft selection. So if I scale this, you see it's just doing it from this angle, but you can do the same thing for like rotation or just moving things around. So it is a fun thing to do. I'm going to leave it as it is. Just wanted to show you that bit. I'm not super convinced about the back legs, so I might try something with this. So I'm going to, oh, sorry. All right, so maybe from here, I'm just gonna scale them quite a bit, see if there's something interesting in doing this. And again, this is another thing that I wanted to show you guys in terms of the prototyping. Like, don't be afraid of changing things, and don't lock yourself into something that just because you already worked on that and you go like, yeah, this is kind of like what I want. Um, you know, things could be definitely improved a lot more. So don't lock yourself into one thing. Feel free to explore it, and that's what the prototype is really powerful, because you're not spending a lot of time. Actually, let's just try something weird, like an inverted sort of wrist. Yeah, I don't know if this is going to be the way to go, but nah, that sort of breaks the the idea. just so that also you guys understand what I'm trying to do with this, I'm going to bring in the tubes, which are, yep. And I'm going to do some quick fingers. So let's turn off symmetry. I'll do something like this. Oops. That's it. I'm going to split hidden, split on mask points. This one right here. I'm going to play with the scale of this very quickly. And then just give it a slide shape so that it's not just random. So this guy kind of like walks on the knuckles, maybe like a gorilla type of thing. And then I'm just going to spread that out from the top, maybe. I'm going to hold the control key and scale that center one, control click, use this like that. And we can hold control and maybe do the thumb, which is going to be a bit thicker. And the thumb, it could be just a very tiny thing, maybe like something useless, because this guy doesn't have any dexterity or any precision grip. Let's say it's just something there. So you see, it's just, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to show here is that there is very simple tools that I'm using to create something that could communicate the idea. So that if you guys kind of like understand roughly where I'm going with this, then I don't have to get into all the details or anything like that if I'm not entirely sure that this is going to work. So prototyping it like this becomes super handy stuff. All right, so now let's take those fingers, let's duplicate them. I think I can reuse them very easily in here. There we go. And potentially here as well, but this is more gonna be like a mantis type of thing. And now that I have this, we can merge these two down and mirror and weld those. So now you can roughly see what I'm going with this huge, it's like a snake um, with legs. And very quickly, I'm just going to explore something just to see in terms of the shape language if I can do something interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, sort of like the body is kind of like resting on the legs as well, so it's like a bit thicker. Maybe it has like a flat head. Actually, it would be interesting. Sorry, I'm just making a lot of changes right now, but I just want to show you that it's. Oh, actually, how come I only have what? This is weird. Oh, okay. All right. So it could be like a very flat head creature. Kind of like a tapeworm type of thing. Maybe that would be interesting. So you see how like the idea of the design keeps evolving during this prototype, and this is what I found fascinating. That you can use any tool you want, but you can also rely on very simple tools and very low poly geometry just to explore the idea before you commit to anything. And sometimes you can come up with things that look pretty cool or that have like an interesting twist, right? That is, I guess, my approach to this sort of design process and figuring things out as you go. Let's push this one closer to the body, so it has more of a recoil action here. Alrighty, cool. So I have a few more minutes. So let me just double check the. Let's do a quick save as well, and let's double check the chat. I know I've been ignoring it for a bit, but hopefully that what I showed you today just gives you some cool ideas. Um, Very organic, cool. Thank you. Getting some Starship Trooper. Maybe Starship Trooper. Yeah, I haven't. I confuse it with something else. Maybe. Do you think that still have room for new 3D artists even with the AI growing on this scenario? Absolutely. I mean, yeah, there's gonna be always that that idea of the UI replacing you, that idea looming, especially if you are new to 3D in general. I think that's the most damaging mindset, and it's totally justified because nowadays with 3D, with AI, you can do things in 3D. You can produce like meshes that are pretty close to something useful, and it's only going to get better. So if you're just starting up in 3D, you might not have that experience will give you um, that will give you that edge or that additional. Let's say, let me put it this way. Um, I don't think that I have necessarily like a style or anything like that. But I do feel like I tend to gravitate to certain topics, themes, and ways of creating my characters and my creatures. So if you look at my portfolio, it's just very bright colors. So I tend to stylize and exaggerate things, but try to keep things sort of realistic. So that's kind of like what I like. And when a director approaches me or someone that wants me to work with them, they are likely to come to me because I have that style. Even though it's hard to say that it's just a style, but like the way that I treat my final images, let's say, right? If you're new to 3D, and this is something that I wouldn't say that I figured it out, but I am comfortable now to say that this is what I do because of the past 15 or 16 years that I've been working doing this, right? So if you're really new to the industry, really new to 3D and all of that, you still have a bunch of years maybe to get to a point that you will be. Sorry, my alarm just went off. To a point that you will feel comfortable with the things that you create, so that you can say, yeah, I'm kind of like on over AI because I have my own vision, I have my own thing, and I'm not saying that I have that. By the way, I'm just saying that this is kind of like how you become more comfortable. So the other side of the coin is that if you're starting up, AI can be um, like a deterrent to go through that process, because you'll see, all right, I don't need to spend all this time, or why would I spend all this time becoming a better artist or knowing getting to know all these tools if AI can do the same thing that I can do right now because I'm a newbie, let's say, and it can do it better and faster. Why would someone hire me? And that is the most destructive sort of like mindset, but it's totally justified. So I think that the damage that AI is kind of like doing, aside from like the whole talk about you know um, the 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 rights, using like, existing work from people to create and train the models and all of that. Aside from that, is the fact that you will feel, I am new to this. I can only do things that a beginner artist is doing. So why would someone try to put some trust in me? Let's say, if AI can do it faster and it could be better. So I think my answer to that is, like, since the beginning of this whole boom of AI has been that as things progresses and you can create incredible things with AI and very easy, very quickly, I think that the uniqueness that you bring into the table, or like what you can develop as your as an artist, would become more valuable. So it's gonna get to a point that it's gonna be very, very easy for anyone to do really crazy, awesome stuff, but they're going to have a very similar taste. And if you don't have your own way of expressing the like, or creating your things, because you don't have that training, you haven't gone through that process of figuring out, like, oh, what is the, like, kind of like what I showed you today, like, oh, what is the shape language, why are you going to choose a creature that is like this instead of this one? all of this stuff becomes more relevant. So I don't know if makes any any sense. I'm kind of like rambling, but um, to sum up, if you spend the time and you want to push yourself to become an artist in the 3D space and in 3D industry, it might be hard, right? Because of the that sort of looming idea of AI could just replace you or does things better than you at this stage because you haven't got to that point, and it could be a deterrent. But just just think that if you want to do this, if you want to get into the industry, the one of the main reasons, the why behind it, is because you are really into it and you're really passionate about it. So that is, for me at least, continues to be the drive of why I do this and why I do these things. Like, this is just a free live stream and sharing what I've learned, so that you guys can get ideas and develop your own passion. That's the key component, I think, is like, if you like it, I'm not gonna get rich doing this. And if I wanted to do something, to become a millionaire, I'd probably do a different job. I don't know. I don't know what I could be what I could be doing, because I don't know, other than this, I don't know much. So I do this because I really love it, and that passion ultimately turns into, I want to learn this, I want to continue learning these other things, I want to bring in this new tool set into my workflow, I want to connect with these other artists that is doing similar things. All of this comes, you know it's a separate thing from the AI stuff. Um, so yeah, in summary, it's, if you're passionate about it, like, why would you give that pleasure of creating your own things to AI, right? And of course, the other side of the coin is like, well, how do I get paid, right? But that's for another conversation, I suppose. Anyway, so you are totally right to think about, like, if the like to think about, like, oh, is there room? Could I do what I'm doing and then get paid and make it like a career? I think there is still room, and the more that we see more stuff coming out with AI, because it's becoming really really easy, then the human element will become more of a rarity. So if you bet on yourself, or like bet on becoming a good artist and learning and invest on yourself, plus the added fact that you like what you're doing, then that rarity of, like, what the human can bring, or like the uniqueness of what you could bring to the table, becomes way more relevant when there is an ocean of the same stuff. There is a really good book. It's a business book, called, uh, I'm hoping I'm getting it right. It's called the Blue Ocean Theory, I think. Um, yeah, I think it's the Blue Ocean. Basically, the premise of the book is that in a blue ocean, you have, like, unlimited space to create and to do things and to be unique and all of that. But when everyone is doing the same thing, that becomes kind of like a red ocean. Like, everyone is doing the same thing. So that is what in a way, I'm not sure if that's really relatable, but that's kind of like what I thought about it. Um, in a way, that's kind of like what I see AI. It's just going to become ubiquitous. Like, everywhere is going to be AI. Everything is going to be AI. So that's going to become the new norm, let's say, and that becomes also the opportunity to move to, let's say, create a different ocean of, like, the human element becomes more of a rarity, more like a commodity that's, like, very rare. So I personally, that's my hope. I'm not sure if this is going to be the case or not, but this is what I think, and also what I hope. So I'm gonna keep betting on myself, and I'm gonna keep training. I have never stopped sort of like learning and producing things, because I know eventually I can push through this and potentially become more like that sort of like rarity of the human element. So yeah, I don't know if that is um, encouraging or not, but that would be my point of view. Anyway, let's wrap it up. What classes, workshops do you have coming up, Pablo? Is there any open enrollment? Not at the moment, but I am arranging my calendar the best I can so that I can open the extra mile and also the substance painter course as well. So we'll see what we're doing, because there is a very cool update coming up for both of those courses. So I have something really, really special for the extra milers, and something really special as well for the SP101. So Once I have the new updates ready, that's when I will open up the courses, and I'm hoping to do it before the end of the year. So it could be like a Christmas present for you guys to join any of those courses. Um, the stream lets me be happier. I'm glad, man. I'm glad. This creature with a human face looks very creepy. Oh, like yeah, I did one with the extra milers actually with the previous cohort. We did this really weird creature that has kind of like a soundbite, not like a crustaceous creature inside, like in the brain, and it's like a clear head, but it has like a human face because the stories that it's trading is trying to mimic like the human body. So it's like really awkward, kind of like a puppet, but it's just a creature inside the head. Anyway, it's maybe that's also what I'm trying to do here. um, all right, so that's it, guys. So hopefully you see the value on this. Remember, this is just the blockout. There's a lot more we could do, and we can explore a bunch of things. But I guess what I wanted to show you is that if you're not happy with this, we spend what, like maybe 45 minutes, an hour working on this, and if you're not happy, there's ways to easily adjust this and change this, and you have low poly, you can push things around, and then create a bunch of um, prototypes and decide which one you want to go for. And I think in the video that I'm working for you guys, this is something that is super important, which is the validation of the idea. We have a dedicated module in the extra mile, by the way, on just this, validating the idea to ensure that you have something that you want to spend time working on is a huge thing that will kind of like ensure the longevity of your project. Otherwise, you can get like the novelty of a project when you see like maybe an inspiration or like someone, maybe you get inspired by this stream, right? And you go like, oh, this is cool what Pablo showed. I want to do something like that. You get that sort of novelty and you go, oh, I'm gonna do a creature. And then 2 days later, it's like, all right, I'm gonna go to the next thing. So going through the process of prototyping is huge because you will be able to decide, okay, this is something that I can dedicate 3 weeks or a month or whatever time you need into creating this, and it's not gonna I know I'm not gonna get bored because I know I can visualize it, I can see it. Whereas if you just do a couple of things that you didn't flesh out really quickly, or you're not entirely sure how you're going to produce it later on, that dilutes that sort of initial spark that you get to create the projects. So yeah, the whole point of this stream is prototype, iterate, find what you think you like and what you think you can dedicate some time to explore because you think it's cool, because it has a reason behind it, or like why you want to do it. And the reason could be, I want to explore this tool and I want to learn this. That's fair enough. So I'm gonna leave it here, guys, because I gotta rush. But again, hopefully this has been of help. Make sure that you turn on notifications. I appreciate if you subscribe to the channel, but if you turn notifications, you'll get the next one up. Also, you can go to the Pablander Academy, and in the events section, you can watch these streams, and you will see what the next one is up. So usually we just post the next week later today, so you will have like a week to prepare. And usually they happen at this time of the at this time of day and during the week. All right, guys. So that is it for me. Hopefully, again, this has been of help, and I will see you